Thanks, Steve. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I suppose as someone with the vowel at the end of my last name, I should be careful in how I say this, but I appreciate being part of the family of Eastern Ontario. Wonderful to be here with all of you, and congratulations, 15th anniversary. I'm really honored to be here. Deanna, congratulations on the retirement. I know I very much appreciate that. I know how tough politics are on families, and I appreciate being here with MPP Clark, who's a friend, an advocate in Eastern Ontario, and I was elected in 2018. I'm from Port Hope, Eastern Ontario, and actually went to school at University of Ottawa. My dog Max, that you mentioned, proudly calls Cranberry Hill Animal Hospital. It was the place he got all of his first shots. Our first vet. They're experts in duck-tolling retrievers. Fun fact. But when I settled in, there's a few people. There's a few people who took the time to listen and mentor, and Steve is one of them. And what he's done on housing for communities like mine, I'm part of a generation. I stand up before you as a minister and an MPP, but my friend circle are many of whom are really still struggling trying to find a home and trying to put a roof over their heads. And thanks to work this man's done, we've now got an affordable housing project on a razor-thin margin that's gone ahead with Habitat for Humanity. The Elgin Park redevelopment in my own community is about to break ground on 86 units, thanks to him. And on a personal note, witnessing how to wrestle and get colleagues in a headlock and advocate for your local community and firmly putting a fist down to get results. I've learned a lot, so a big round of applause to Steve for your leadership. Mimicry is the greatest form of flattery, and how he advocates for this community is something I strive to emulate for Northumberland, Peterborough South. So thank you for having me. I'm excited with the opportunity to be here to connect with all of you, to exchange ideas. And an Ontario that's going to flourish in all corners is an Ontario that recognizes the North, from our critical mineral strategy to power the EV production that we're seeing, but also Eastern Ontario. And if I'm to be frank in sort of the outlook that I take on this, I want to see Eastern Ontario really flexing our might, because an Ontario that's going to fire on all cylinders is one that is achieving our potential from a labor perspective in Eastern Ontario, Northern Ontario, and all over the corners of this province. Bringing together local, provincial, and federal representatives, along with figures from the private sector here, your eye to the future and finding solutions for our communities is so welcome, and I look forward to, after answering questions and speaking with you offline. As the new minister, as MPP Clark mentioned, I'm excited to get to work. I've been on the job 5 weeks, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this opportunity. As the grandson of an immigrant who came over from Italy with nothing in his pockets, who worked in the steel sector, my dad worked in the steel sector. My dad was also the first to go to university, ultimately became an architect. I'm pretty proud of the importance of labor. My grandfather was part of a generation, I think rightly and proudly can say, built this province, producing the steel that was needed. And just a short number of generations later, his grandson is serving in Queen's Park. And that's the Ontario, that's the Canadian dream. And I would say for the first time ever, I think there's a next generation wondering, will we have that same potential that my grandfather, who was the 8th son, they were really innovative, they called him Otto, 8, Reno, he came over here, and people are wondering, and my outlook on this is that society does not value, or we do not value a society, we don't value a society that we passively inherit. We value a society that we have an active stake in creating. And that is the very ethos of how we look at things at Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development. Sorry for the Freudian slip there. That's our ethos, is giving people a stake. I think there's a fundamental outlook. I don't believe in in just giving handouts, but giving people a fundamental leg up and giving people the opportunity to achieve their full potential. And in my remarks, I think hopefully if you leave with one thing today, you'll leave with that outlook. We're building a society that leaves no one behind and that gives people the opportunity to achieve their full potential and to take an active stake in building the sort of societies we all want to be a part of. I would love to start, I'll start first by talking about Working for Workers 3, which we passed in my first few days on the job. You get in and then they say in 24 hours, you're speaking to a piece of legislation, which was great. And my predecessor, Minister Monty McNaughton, deserves a lot of credit for Working for Workers 3. I've introduced now Working for Workers 4, and how we do it in such a short span really is reflective of our outlook. In investing in workers, having workers back, we do multiple red tape, pieces of legislation, multiple pieces of legislation for workers, because to have the hand on the pulse, you have to treat it like a real living entity and constantly be introducing legislation. So in Working for Workers 3, we were proud to introduce the highest health and safety fines in the country, along with new penalties for those who try to abuse temporary foreign workers by withholding their passports and work permits and things of that nature. I mean, these are human beings whom we need and who deserve to be treated with respect. We made our job-protected leave for military reservist heroes who put their lives on the line to defend us and our country, the most flexible and comprehensive of its kind in Canada. And I was just on the heels of announcing a new skills development fund, which will resonate with many of you. I've already had conversations on SDF funding, with helmets to hard hats, coding for veterans, True Patriot Love, just to name a few, and the transformative changes this is having. And we're on the heels of November 11th. Our veterans deserve respect, and I'm really proud of the work Ontario's done. Dare I say, to fill an area that's sorely lacking at the federal level to support our men and women in uniform and investing in them. So helmets to hard hats here in Clint, coding for veterans. 8,000 men and women put on their uniform for the last time every year in Ontario. And thanks to the Skills Development Fund, they're finding a soft landing in Ontario and actively pursuing their passions and transitioning. We will also be the first province to require women's-only washrooms on construction sites and properly fitting PPE. And I know that sounds perhaps a bit trite and common sense to all of you, but it's crazy. Like in 2023, we're the government that got that through, and it's the right thing to do. I mean, to hear stories, and I was on a job site the other day, Leuna 183, a high-rise, and speaking, the stories in this ministry are really what's transformative. And I spoke to a woman who spoke about traveling hundreds of meters just to go to the washroom. That's nuts. And I was at a helmets to hard hats event, another recipient of SDF funding, and spoke to Rachel. Everyone there were similar to me. When I said to my grandparents, I was interested in politics, traditional Italian immigrants, they said, doctor, lawyer. And I spoke to Hani from Pakistan, and when he said skilled trades, his parents said, doctor, lawyer. So, it resonated with me. And Rachel, when I looked out there, almost everyone was first gen, entering the skilled trades, some of whom now own their own home. And this young girl, Rachel, put up her hand and she said, I'm not first generation. My parents worked minimum wage. Their parents worked minimum wage. Well, she's a steam fitter, pipe fitter now, working with the local in Toronto. And she's the first person in her family to earn more than minimum wage. And hearing those stories of young women, she was soft-spoken, but cracking into the trades is really meaningful. And I know some of those systemic barriers on washrooms, on properly fitting PPE so that you can be protected, occupational health and safety, on the job site is really key. And the results speak for themselves. I mean, that's in part of the solution, but what have we seen? We've seen a nearly 30% increase in registration on women in the trades. We've seen a 136 increase in representation of women in the building trades, in the construction trades. That's massive. I mean, if we're going to build the hospitals we need, the campus, post-secondary campuses, the schools we need in Eastern Ontario, we'd be foolish to do that leaving 50% of the workforce behind. So I'm really proud of some of the early wins in Working for Workers 3. In that same week, as we passed, we announced Ontario's minimum wage was increasing to $16.55 per hour. And by indexing it to the rate of inflation, Ontario now has one of the highest minimum wages in Canada, but it's also predictable for employers long out. You're not, at the whim of political parties on the eve of an election, who would say, we'll raise it by $3. So I think that predictability long-term is the right thing to do. Working for Workers 4, which I just introduced and spoke to yesterday in the legislature as we did a marathon session towards midnight last night into the wee hours of the morning. Working for Workers 4 builds on that momentum, and I was proud to introduce it to strengthen worker protections, help tackle the labor shortage, and power economic growth. And some of those changes include requiring employers to provide salary ranges on job ads. I mean, again, sounds common sense, but imagine jumping through all of the hurdles, a single parent perhaps, and I speak to one quite often who lives in RGI housing in Cobourg, and she's very much a mirror for me to be a better MPP. She's always in my office sharing unique challenges that I can't resonate with, as someone who's not facing the challenges she is. And she spoke to me about it's almost a second job applying for that better job. And so to go through all those hurdles just to find out at the end that the job you've applied for is less than you're making today, I'm proud to be one of the first jurisdictions in North America, along with a few other states, to include salary ranges in job postings. Salary transparency is also a big piece in pay equity and in bridging the pay gap between men and women, and making it clear that businesses, not just in the restaurant industry, but across the service sector and beyond, are prohibited from deducting wages when folks dine and dash. This is a big issue on Gas and Dash in Mississauga. Someone tragically lost their life. Banning unpaid trial shifts was another piece in this legislation, and enabling super indexing in the WSIB so that injured workers, 134,000 of whom we're supporting every year, injured workers have the supports that they need when you encounter things like the COVID-19 pandemic and challenges. Injured workers deserve to know that their government has their back and is here to support them. We've also expanded retroactive supports for heroes who run into buildings as we run from them, including esophageal cancer, along with thyroid and pancreatic cancer, which was in Working for Workers 3. That is, for those who are keen to look into it, the result of a story. I mean, good public policy sometimes starts with a story. I already had a few of them before I came in. That's the case of Allison Bowman, whose wife, Craig, tragically lost his life. And Allison made a call as Craig was battling esophageal cancer. Firefighters are 4 times more likely to be exposed to that. And she made a call and said, WSIB will not support my family and is not supporting my husband as he battles with cancer. And my predecessor and the Premier said they would fix it. And Craig wanted that assurance. And the day after he got that assurance, he passed away in hospice. And that sort of story really motivates us to fix WSIB, which was an undervalued benefit just a few years ago, and today is expanding benefits for workers while also keeping employer premiums at a stable rate. That's a WSIB system that's working for injured workers, working for employers, and I would say working for Ontarians. Because I believe genuinely that an economy that doesn't work for workers doesn't work at all. We've also included supports for newcomers. And as we look to how we can grow in Eastern Ontario, I'm starting to see diversity in communities like mine. Remember, I'm still part of Eastern Ontario, that we didn't see just a mere decade ago. I'm also seeing younger families. I think the pandemic exacerbated that. And so banning Canadian work experience from job ads is a key piece. We're not banning work experience. We're banning the Canadian work experience piece, which is a key barrier. Only 1 in 4 newcomers work in their field, and it's estimated the lost economic potential of having newcomers practice the fields in which they've studied costs in excess of tens of billions of dollars to Ontario's economy. So why does that matter? If you can drive a combine in the States, a combine in Australia, in the UK, you should be assessed and be able to drive that combine here. And I think people are sick and tired of hopping in an Uber or a cab and hearing their driver's a doctor or a nurse. People are sick and tired of that. And so we've done a number of things on foreign credential recognition, but also just that piece of mandating that Canadian work experience slams the door in the face of that newcomer before they even get assessed for their competency. So as someone who worked in healthcare before, I'm a big believer in assessing competency. If you were educated at one of the many Royal Colleges of physicians and surgeons, you were certified by them worldwide, I would say that there shouldn't be a significant gap to then practicing here in Canada. So banning that piece is a big piece. And we heard from newcomers at the Canadian Newcomer Centre who are desperate to crack into the workspace. Because today, and I'll share, this was an issue I intended and my deputy will address today. We have record numbers of newcomers coming into our province. Now, we know that those numbers are determined at the federal level, but how does Ontario respond? So last year we had 40,000 asylum claimants. This year, that number will be 100,000. That will cost Ontario and our social services an estimated over $800 million. And we're certainly doing our part. But would you know that we're one of the few G7 countries, if not the only one, that doesn't ask basic skills of asylum claimants? What is your education? What are your skill sets? What is your literacy rate? What languages do you speak? We don't even ask that. So what we have is this nasty confluence, and Peel Region was in the spotlight yesterday, of people arriving who are now in the shelter system dealing with very fragile people tackling mental health addictions issue. And I had a nurse for the first time ever in Port Hope from Kenya who was abused in the shelter system. So I've said to the federal government, it's more than just showing up for photo ops. It's about actually being there to support people as they integrate into a life here in Ontario. And when I hear that we have asylum seekers with nursing credentialing and with fundamental skill sets, you've got to be able to integrate in to fill in-demand labor market needs. So that's what we're seized with. And I know it's less poignant here, but in Ottawa and in Peel Region and in Toronto, these are issues. And how can we get people out to fill in-demand jobs here? And so I'll go on to talk a bit about how we're doing that and credentialing and helping people both who are hard to place in the employment realm, all to those who are just looking to do a pivot in their career. I know that word pivot's been used too often in the pandemic, but we do that through the Skills Development Fund. That is a $1.4 billion envelope with the capital stream that we just announced, supporting people in reducing the labor shortage, the 250,000 jobs going unfilled. 26,000 of those are in Eastern Ontario, including right here in Leeds, Grenville. Whether it's here, Thunder Bay, Windsor, or any other part of the province, I see Main Street, something I didn't see when I was first elected. I see now help wanted from CPK, to Protoplast and to a number of employers in my own community. I see the help wanted signs. So how do we get people into those jobs? Well, I'm proud to say the Skills Development Fund is a great example, and I'll tell the story of Phil. Phil was at Safeway working minimum wage jobs, often working for cash. Why is that not good from a public policy maker standpoint? It's not good for me because if he's working cash jobs, he's not paying taxes. And if he's working cash jobs, whoever is employing him and doing that is devaluing all of the honest, decent employers out there in our community. And that's the vast majority. And why does it matter for me? Because, Phil wanted to do more. He wanted to be able to have a roof over his head, a car that he could say he owns. And through the Skills Development Fund, he became an iron worker in Thunder Bay. And he shared that story. So I'm not sharing anything that he didn't share publicly when I was up there. Local 759. Now Phil, who was approached by Adam at that Safeway, now Phil is gainfully employed. And he's doing... I'll draw the analogy. My grandmother, again, I told you Val at the end of the last name, my grandmother taught me her pasta sauce recipe. And before she got early signs of tragically dementia, we would always ask her to give us a sauce. So after about 15 tries, we narrowed it down to that sauce that we loved. And that's how we show love, is teaching. That's my mom, my grandmother, a way to express their love. And now Phil's doing that for the next generation of iron workers. He's leading and teaching them bigger paychecks and better jobs. And that's what really is at the essence of our skills development fund. To date, we've invested over $860 million through this fund, and we have helped more than 500,000 people take that next step in their careers. And that includes programs right here in Leeds, Grenville. For example, TR Leger Apprenticeship Training Center in Kempville, 50 local job seekers upgrade their skills. In Brockville, 50 workers and job seekers upgrading technical skills as electricians. These are just some of the examples, like Phil's story in Thunder Bay, of how we're upskilling people into better paying jobs. Skilled trades, we know, are some of the most in-demand jobs are in the skilled trades. They're often with pensions and benefits, and they're the jobs where you can see the result of your hard work. And that's why we've invested, as I said, over $1 billion in that fund. And we've launched a brand new agency, Skilled Trades Ontario, to replace the Ontario College of Trades, which was really problematic when we were first elected. And we're changing the way students are learning, and we're embracing foreign credentialing. We're improving that online portal at Skilled Trades Ontario, and we have seen an increase in apprenticeship registration by 24%, including that nearly historic 30% increase in women that I mentioned earlier. We're also entering the second year of Skilled Trades career fairs. Students with 10 around the province this year, 25,000 students participating. I was just at the one yesterday morning in Mississauga, and to see 10,000 students descend upon those skilled trades. We've doubled them this year. We're going to double them again next year. Students, their eyes opened up as they do things with their hands. And to see for those students, to be on the front line of public transit, of building the schools, hospitals, roads, bridges we need. I mean, the highway's not going to widen itself in Eastern Ontario, the 401. We're going to need people who are going to do that. And so I met some of the students who I very much believe will be on the front lines of doing that. And we're expanding those. This is the first time in Ontario we have a systemic Level Up Careers Fair that's done across Ontario. They're a massive success. It's transforming lives, and they're growing. And I'm looking forward, and I know Steve is, of getting more of them in Eastern Ontario next year. We also are leading employment services transformation. I spoke with some of you just before we started about our employment services transformation. That's a big piece because I firmly believe, when people encounter challenges in their life, we have an encampment in Cobourg that's been very, very difficult, and I'm not the only community that are dealing with these challenges. Making sure an employment services system is there to work for people. And we've classified, and I think very revolutionary in terms of our outlook on that, Class C, which is the hardest to place, people chronically unhoused, perhaps living in encampments, perhaps battling very systemic issues that are a barrier to employment. Incentivizing employment service transformation to actually place those individuals and give them a leg up. And we're already seeing transformative results. I think we talked 40% placement and long-term results. This is massive. This is massive for giving people. We need a robust social service system there for those who truly need it, but we also need a social service system that isn't just growing, but that's actually getting people out. Too many view the metrics of social services as a binary. The more money we throw at it, the more successful it is. I challenge that paradigm. I challenge that. And I would submit to you that a social service system that's getting people out of social services and into the dignity of a job and of standing on one's own 2 feet, I think that is a social service system that works. And it is working. Early indications from our employment service transformation show that it's working. Fixing the fragmented system that plagued it. When I first got elected, I'm an MPP. I have every added benefit of being able to call people up and understand the system. I still struggle to wrap my head around that system locally. Imagine being someone who's out of a job, mental health, suffering from addictions. How are you going to navigate that system if the majority of us struggle to navigate it? So really, the transformative work we're on there is on a mission to make the system better for those who need it. And we're streamlining the more than 700 Employment Ontario locations to make it easier to use and help job seekers. We're integrating Ontario Works and ODSP employment programs into Employment Ontario, which is common sense. It gives people the services they need, where and when they need it. Doesn't just focus on the basics like resume writing, but goes above and beyond to wrap our arms around each and every client. If someone needs a bus ticket to get to their first interview or work boots for their first day on the job, we'll cover it. And let me tell you, the results we're seeing, as I said, in Muskoka-Kawartha, which is my jurisdiction, one of the first pilots, we've put more than 70,000 people, that with Hamilton, Niagara, and Peel, 70,000 people on the path to meaningful jobs. The system's rolling out in Kingston, Pembroke as we speak, and I look forward to sharing those early results as we have it, because we can't leave families stuck in the system where only 1% of people are leaving. And those who do, the majority, we know, return after. So we have to do better, and I pledge to you, only working with you can we make those systems better. And finally, I would say another teaser of something we're working on now is a one window, which had its genesis in the challenges in placing newcomers into in-demand labor market fields, but a one-window approach to in-demand jobs, a one-stop shop to getting people in. We're working with a number of communities already on that piece, and stay tuned for more on that as we roll out Working for Workers 5. I'm excited. You know, I said to you as I started, I told you about my grandfather, and I told you about the first perhaps generation of young parents now wondering if their children will be better off than that Ontario and that Canada that my grandfather came to. And I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we can, because I'm seeing record investments in the automotive sector coming into Ontario, a critical mineral strategy that's getting the critical minerals we need to back that up, a government that's making record infrastructure investments to build the hospitals, the schools, the roads, the bridges, the highways, the public transit of tomorrow. For the first time ever, my community is now connected into the Metrolink system, and we need men and women who get up each and every day in the skilled trades to support that. But we can't do it alone. Good public policy is about being challenged, is about a dialogue. And I'm here to say I welcome that. I welcome being challenged. I welcome your innovative ideas on ways we can get people into in-demand jobs and ways we can continue to transform employment services, work with us getting more people into the skilled trades, work on breaking down credentialing barriers that are a systemic challenge for getting people into in-demand healthcare jobs. But we're doing it together, and early results are showing a lot of this is working, and I look forward to working with all of you. You have the strong ideas, you have the strong expertise, great school system here to help ensure we're on the right track. And I know that opportunities in this Ontario, I choose to believe that they are limitless and that we can achieve the potential for next generation, for newcomers alike. And I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you to make sure that that happens, and most importantly, that that happens right here in Eastern Ontario. So thank you very much for having me today.